Legend of the Golden City. Treasure Hunters Alliance Book 2. Written by Michael Webb. Narrated by Tim Campbell. Chapter 1. "This is going to be the last time you see me in a dump like this." Denton slumped onto the bar, barely avoiding knocking over his ale. How many mugs had he had? Couldn't be sure. What started as a celebratory dinner had turned into drinks, and then more drinks, and then the crowded rooms spinning around him. The cool surface of the bar pressed against his flushed face. "My life's going to be different now." "Is that right?" The bartender sounded bored. Maybe Denton had already explained his future of wealth and riches. He couldn't remember. A cool sea breeze blew through the open windows, perking him up. With some effort, he sat up again. "You'll see. I will come back and buy this bar." "You'd be doing me a favor," the bartender said. Denton spent a lot of time in inns, and a salty launch was better than most. At the far edge of the seaside town of Maris, the beds were cheaper, and the patrons minded their own business, busy with arguments or gamut. Lanterns along the walls flickered cozy lights through the room. Near the window, a broad-shouldered man in a dark cloak sipped from a glass of whiskey. "What does a man have to do to get service round here?" another patron barked. A short, balding man with an angry pink scar where his right ear should have been. "Another ale, Callum?" The bartender poured a mug and slid it across the bar to the one-eared man. "Keep your pants on, Thomas. It's a busy night." "Not so busy that you can't indulge some drunken ramblings, I see." "Ramblings?" Denton barely noticed the slur in his own voice. "You're speaking to a future Lord of Palenting." Thomas laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. A man like you wouldn't last a week in Palenting." "As if you'd know." "Of course I'd know. I know every city in Terranor, and then some. Tell him, Callum." The bartender rolled his eyes. "Thomas thinks he's a mercenary for hire instead of a traveling salesman." "Salesman?" Thomas's face turned red, the scar at the side of his missing ear remaining pale. "I'm a collector of rare goods, a dealer, closer to a fine goods curator than a salesman." He took an angry swig of his ale. "Huh!" Denton raised his mug to Thomas. "You know a thing or two about rare goods?" "More than a thing or two," Thomas chuckled as he stood and walked closer. "What, you have something of interest?" Denton grinned. "More than interest. I have something a salesman like you can only fantasize about." "I'm not a salesman," Thomas forced through gritted teeth. "Fools like you always think they have something remarkable. I've wasted plenty of time on nonsense." "Fool!" Denton smacked the bar with his palm. The sound echoed through the room. "You'll regret disrespecting me." The sound caught the attention of the other patrons in the bar. By the window, the man in the cloak set his glass of whiskey down. "All right, lads," the bartender said. "I think you've both had enough." "No," Thomas leaned forward, holding up a hand. "I'm curious. What does this fool think he has?" Denton puffed out his chest. He was always hot-headed, but booze made it worse. This salesman was getting in his face, doubting him the way everyone doubted him. But now everything will be different. "I don't think anything," Denton said. "I know what I have. The key of Kytalia." Thomas's eyes whitened. They flicked to the bartender, then back. His lips made as if to speak, but nothing came out. Denton grinned. "Now I've got his interest." A laugh from the salesman shattered his hope. "Kytalia? Ha!" The cackle was boisterous. "The city of gold is a myth. You're even more foolish than I thought." He clapped Denton on the shoulder, drained the remainder of his mug, then dropped a few tid on the bar. "I'm off to bed, Callum." Denton scowled at the salesman's back as the man ascended the stairs. "Another round," he grunted. After a pause, Callum poured another ale. A cold drink did nothing to ease Denton's irritation. "Idiot man has no idea." A gaze burned into his back, leaving him fidgeting. "What are you looking at?" he snapped at the dark figure by the window. Appearing unfazed, the man picked up his whiskey and drained the rest. Denton worked on his ale, listened to the crashing waves, and mused over his upcoming change in fortune. His vision grew increasingly blurry the longer he sat. When the mug emptied, he waved his hand for another. "I think you've had enough," the bartender said. Denton clambered to his feet. "I'll be the judge of that." The room tilted and his stomach lurched. "Yeah, maybe he's right." He stumbled toward the stairs. But before he arrived, Thomas descended the final step and walked to the door of the inn. The salesman made eye contact, flashing a faint grin as he pushed the door open and left. Denton considered chasing after the man to pick a fight, but with his fuzzy vision it probably wasn't the wisest idea. Instead, he ascended the stairs to his rented room on the second floor of the Salty Lodge. He fumbled with the door to his room, then pushed it open and left it that way while he found a lone candle on the small dresser. After several strikes of flint, the candle flickered to life. His bed looked welcoming, small but soft. The perfect size to sleep off the alcohol before he left in the morning. Footsteps sounded behind him. "Where is it?" a threatening voice whispered from the doorway. Shoved forward, Denton's knees slammed into the hard wooden floor. The terror racing through him numbed any pain. He spun and looked up. A hulking shadow loomed over him. The whiskey drinker from the bar lowered his cloak. The flickering light of the candle cast the man's face in shadow. He sneered down at Denton. A long vertical scar ran over his left eye. "It's you," Denton gasped. You... "I'll ask you once more. Where is it?" My brother will hear about this," Denton stammered. "He certainly will." Before Denton could respond, the man grasped his arm and hauled him to his feet. "Tell me where the key is." "The key is mine." Denton's mind reeled while thoughts of riches and power slipped through his fingers. Whimpered words dribbled from his lips. "I tracked it down. It belongs to me." "Tell me." The man twisted Denton's arm behind his back. Denton squawked in pain as it burned through his shoulder. "It's not here." "You're lying." He twisted harder. Denton swore. Something popped in his shoulder and a spasm of pain ran down his side. His resolve to resist shattered with a crack of his body. Stop! Okay, I'll tell you." Tears blurred his vision. It's in the dresser." The man released his arm. Denton groaned as he crumpled to the ground. He wanted to get up, to fight back, but his arm screamed and his legs wouldn't cooperate. "There's nothing here." The man tossed the clothes from the dresser. "What?" Denton's breath caught. "I put it there for safekeeping. The second drawer." "There's nothing." "I swear I did." "You're lying to me." The man turned around. "Where is it?" "That doesn't make sense." Denton scrambled backward, pain shooting down his arm. Terror ran like ice through his veins. "I'm not lying. I swear it must have—" The man on the stairs, his smirk. Cold sliced through his impaired thoughts, bringing clarity. "The salesman from Palenting," Denton gasped. "He stole it just now. I saw him leaving the inn." The man's eyes narrowed. "You flaunted the object's presence to the entire bar like a fool. Then you let it disappear." "It's not my fault," Denton pleaded. The man stepped forward, then pushed on Denton's injured shoulder with his foot. Pain burned behind his eyes as he groaned and thrashed. When the spots cleared from his vision, the man still loomed over him with a coil of rope in his calloused hands. "Please," Denton whispered. His heart froze in his chest. "Not that. Please." A cruel grin split the man's face. "There's still a price to pay." Chapter 2. The sun hung high and fell in golden beams against the vertical rock face. Peter rubbed his hands together, then blew into them to warm up. Though it was still early in the weather season and the deep cold had yet to arrive, the morning chill clung to the rock and numbed his hands at the touch. "Here, take this." Safiri handed him a canteen of hot tea. "Oh, perfect." Peter didn't drink, just held the canteen until feeling returned to his hands. "All right," Ryland shouted from high above their heads. "This is the place." Kira stepped back, craning her neck. "You sure you're tall enough?" "Watch it, Kira." Kira covered a laugh with her hand, strands of blonde hair trailing over her arm. Safiri stayed seated, but her gaze focused on Rylan. If he screwed up, she'd be the one to make sure he didn't break his bones. Secluded in the foothills north of Palenting, the crag made the perfect destination for Peter and his friends on a beautiful week-term day. Tiny features and cracks covered the 4-story rock face, creating enough roots to the top that they never got bored. It was something they never could have done before Safiri introduced them to the source. A 4-story fall wasn't so bad if you had a cushion of air to catch you at the bottom. Rylan pressed his toe into a tiny jutting rail on the rock, then sprang his stocky form up toward the hold above his head. His grunt reached the ground as he hung from his fingertips. Peter, Safiri, and Kira watched, leaning forward. "His arm's shaking," Peter said. "He's going to lose it." Rylan pulled hard on the rock and heaved himself up to a more secure position. Safiri exhaled in relief. High above, Rylan whooped, then continued up the rock face at a steady clip. "He can just muscle through moves like that," Kira said. "It's not fair." "He probably didn't see that crimp you used," Safiri said. "I sure didn't." Kira laughed. "Fair point." Kira climbed with her brain more than anything else, positioning her body to use side holds in ways Peter never considered. Rylan was strong, Kira was balanced, and Peter was fast. If he dashed through the hard parts, he didn't waste energy. As Rylan moved into an easy section of the rock face, Kira dropped onto their blanket and tore off a chunk of bread from their stash in the picnic basket. "It's nice to have a week-term morning off," she said. "Those training sessions have been killing me." "You're still practicing at the museum?" Safiri raised her eyebrows. "It's been weeks." "I know. I think I finally got Mother's approval. She wants to make sure my tours are perfect before I lead them alone. My last test is this afternoon." "Want to trade?" Peter sipped tea with his hands wrapped around the canteen. "I'll run tours at the museum if you'll work at the Masons." "It's a miracle you still have that job after missing so much work," Safiri said. "Sometimes I wish he'd fire me," Peter said. "Then I could focus on training instead of making bricks." Safiri shot him a sideways look and opened her mouth. Peter tensed until Kira interrupted. "How are things at the farm?" His shoulders relaxed. "Better now that we don't have that viper loan hanging over our heads. My father's considering getting a tattoo to cover the old brand." "Your father?" Safiri's eyebrows raised. "A tattoo?" "I know, it's crazy, but it'd be safer so it's not obvious he used to be indebted to them." Kira nodded. "The vipers are a lot weaker without Razor, but they're not gone. If any of them see his brand, they might try to get in his business again." "Better to keep our heads down." "You've always been great at that," Safiri teased. Peter laughed. The twinkle in her eyes sent a warm rush through his body. He knocked his shoulder against hers. "How are things at the laundry shop?" She smiled, dropping her gaze to her lap. "Better than I expected. It's nice to make a little coin of my own. I'm thinking about adding more days, actually. Those rich people in Parrotshill View have no shortage of fine gowns to clean. And being able to speed up the drying with a bit of wind doesn't hurt." "What?" Kira gawped. "You do that?" Safiri's playful look danced between them. "Only when there's no one around, and only a little." Rylan cheered, pumping his fist in the air at the top of the cliff. Peter cupped his hand around his mouth. "Nice job, Ry." Rylan picked his way down the sloping gully back to where the picnic blanket was spread on the grass. He grinned and shook out his arms, his short brown hair bobbing as he approached. "See if you can beat that, Peter." "As in go faster than you?" Peter stood and stretched his arms overhead. "Yeah, I think I can do that." As if suddenly remembering Peter's source power, Rylan's shoulders fell. "Oh, right." He dropped into the seat Peter vacated. Peter stretched his wrists, rolled his shoulders, then placed a hand on the cold rock. He gazed up the cliff. Standing at the base, it seemed to loom taller than 4 stories. Above, the place where he fell on his previous attempt taunted him. "No, this time I can do it." He gripped the large jutting rock, then glanced back. Safiri watched, hands spread, prepared to cushion a fall. Peter set his skin on the featured rock and surged upward. Sparks danced over his skin as the source power raced through him from the center of his chest to his fingertips. He moved with cat-like speed, leaping from hold to hold so rapidly he barely touched them. Halfway to the top, the route became complex. His fingertips barely fit on the jutting ledges. Wind whipped through his hair as he danced from hold to hold, hands growing numb on the cold rock. He reached for the next small sloping ledge with his right hand around a corner and his feet on tiny, barely visible edges. His fingers ached. Too cold. I can't. Quite. A hand slipped. His foot cut out and his body swung like a barn door in the wind. He gasped and tightened his grip on the corner, barely holding on. "Nice save," Rylan called from below. Peter risked a glance down. At the base of the cliff, his friends had lifted to their feet. Safiri waited, ready. He took a deep breath, then exhaled and rebalanced. Catching the edge of the crimp, he moved carefully upward. Maybe I got a little overeager with my source speed, he thought. He tried to channel Kira's methodical nature instead. Left hand on a crimp, right hand to grasp a ledge, left hand on the same ledge, then both palms flat as he lifted himself. "Phew!" he exclaimed. "That was... ah!" With a hiss, a green and black checkered snake lunged toward his face, fangs bared. Peter jerked backward and to the side, avoiding the attack. His hands scrabbled at the dirt on the ledge but found no purchase. With another shout, he slipped off the cliff and plummeted toward the ground. The wind whipped around him. He closed his eyes. Whump! He landed hard on a cushion of air, knocking the wind from his lungs. He glanced to the side and found himself floating half his height above the ground. When the cushion dissipated, he dropped the remaining distance, landing in the dirt. "Are you all right?" Safiri asked. Peter groaned as he sat up. "Yeah," he winced. "I'm fine." "Sorry for the hard catch. I didn't expect you to fall. What happened?" Peter caught his breath, then pushed disheveled, sweaty hair from his forehead. "Tartis viper." "What?" Kira frantically looked around where they sat like another one might pop out of the grasses. "You saw one?" "Nearly got bitten by one." Peter flopped onto his back, his heart still racing. "Tartis vipers are bad, right?" Rylan asked. Kira scoffed. "Yeah, I'd say so. Their venom kills in seconds. He'd probably have been dead before he even hit the ground." He gulped. "Yeah, that's bad." "If they're nesting up there, we need to find a different crag to climb," Safiri said. "You sure you're okay?" Peter nodded. He sat up, then threw the others a shaky grin. "Really, I'm fine. Even with venomous snakes around, this is still better than working for Jenkins. I bet those reflexes will serve me right in the army. Right, Rylan?" "Are they going to be throwing vipers at us in the army?" Rylan grimaced. "I changed my mind. You can join up alone." Peter raised his eyebrows. "You want to be a bricklayer forever?" Rylan groaned. "I'm joking, Peter, but I do think you're a little too obsessive about training. They'll train us when we join, that's the whole point." "They wouldn't let you join at all if they knew you had source power," Safiri said. The humour drained from the conversation. "Seth, they won't find out," Peter said. "I've got good reflexes and Rylan's abnormally strong. There's nothing to it." "You can't guarantee that," Safiri said. "Someone can and will figure it out. It just takes one slip." "We won't slip." "You don't know that. You can't know. But what I do know is what happened to my parents when they were found out." Her blazing eyes stared at him. A breeze whipped through Peter's sweaty hair, making goosebumps rise on his nape. "And it shouldn't have," he said. "What happened to them was awful, but we know how to keep ourselves safe. It's barely a risk." "How can you be sure of that?" Safiri asked. "How can you trust the army?" "It's not about trust," Peter said. "My whole life I've thought that I would be stuck on the farm. Now I have a chance to do what I want. The source power isn't just a risk, it's an advantage. Who wouldn't want a soldier with our skills? I'll climb the ranks fast." "The higher you climb, the further the fall," Safiri said, hands on her hips. "Guys," Rylan said, "can we have this argument somewhere without the risk of Tartis viper bites?" Safiri held Peter's gaze for a long moment. Her dark skin and hair matched her eyes, which glowered at him. He thought she might smack him with a powerful gust of wind, but then she sighed and cut her gaze to the side. "You're right." Kira gazed at the sun. "I need to get back to town anyway. It's later than I realized, and my mother will be furious if I'm not on time." Kira shooed them off the picnic blanket and packed up the basket. "We should hurry." Peter nodded. Things were tense between him and Safiri. No matter how many times they had the same argument, they never seemed to get anywhere with it. But a better life was so close he could taste it. And Zafiri was right. It was a risk, but he couldn't just let go of that desire. Peter dragged his feet as the four friends hiked back toward the city. Zafiri walked alongside Kira, who set a brisk pace. Rylan dropped back to join Peter. "You gotta stop bringing it up, man," Rylan muttered. "That argument never goes anywhere." I know. Peter kept his gaze on his feet. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to cause tension with everyone." "Don't worry, it will blow over." "Every time it comes up, it seems to hurt her a little more." "I don't want to hurt her," Peter thought. "I want her to understand." "Don't look so depressed," Rylan clapped him on the shoulder. "You just survived a harrowing battle with a TARDIS Viper. I think that deserves a proper meal at the tavern, don't you?" Peter wasn't rich, but he did have a few copper tid in his pocket. He smiled. "You might be onto something." Chapter 3. "Guys, come on!" Kira hustled through the cobbled streets of Brufek Heights toward the museum. "Hurry!" Sweat beaded at her temples. "We should have left much earlier. Mother's going to be furious." "Why are we coming?" Rylan asked. A watery feeling ran through Kira's gut. "Did I forget to tell them?" She cringed. "Just come on." She rounded the corner, breathing hard, and found the decorative columns of the museum stretching up its impressive white stone edifice. Her breath caught. Her mother waited in front of the building's heavy wooden doors. Kira leaped back around the corner before she was spotted. She patted her hair, trying to smooth down any sweaty flyaways, and then handed the picnic basket and blanket to Peter. She untied her dress from where it had been bound up around her waist. It hung to the ground and hid her trousers. She pressed against the fabric, attempting to smooth out the wrinkles. Stains of dirt marred the elbows of her plain dress, and sweat dampened her hand as she wiped her face. "I hope I look passable." Rylan, Peter, and Zafiri all blinked at her. "I need a favor," Kira said. "Do you have a minute?" "I'm starving," Rylan moaned. Peter's eyebrow lifted. "A minute for what?" "Dinner's on me. Soon. Please?" Rylan frowned and then looked at the others. Kira forced a quick smile. "Just follow my lead." Kira took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and rounded the corner. "Hello, Mother." Rosalind Lancaster didn't have a single hair out of place. Attired in a fine blue dress, her plaited pale hair created an understated but elegant look. She looked wealthy, as she always did. Kira appreciated growing up in ease and comfort, but her mother's tendency to show off grated on her. "Kira?" Her mother peered down her nose. "I see you've brought your audience." Rylan cocked his head. "Wait, what?" A jab from Zafiri stopped him mid-sentence. "Yes," Kira gestured at her sweaty, dirty friends. Rylan rubbed his side and put on a sudden grin. Zafiri ducked her head in greeting, looking sheepish. Peter ran a hand through his shaggy hair. "All right, then," her mother sighed. "Welcome, all three of you. Kira will take you through our new exhibit, Art of the Late Tarvinian Era." "Sounds great." Rylan's tone indicated he'd rather head toward the stocks. Rosalind closed the heavy doors behind them. Inside, the museum was quiet and dimly lit, and the late afternoon sun streamed in from the skylight. She gestured for Kira to step forward. Kira straightened her shoulders. "I can do this. Confidence. Speak clearly." She lifted her chin. "Welcome to the Palenting Art and History Museum," she projected in a clear, professional voice. Peter's eyes widened with her change, and she suppressed a laugh at his expression. "If you'll follow me, I'll guide you through our latest collection." Her three friends followed like ducklings, and Rosalind stuck close, watching with a keen eye. While a nervous tingle did run through Kira's body, a rush of adrenaline did as well. She led them into the western wing of the museum. Inside, rare statues filled the center of the elegant room, artifacts displayed along the far end, and paintings hung from the walls. Rylan slumped, taking in the large exhibit. "As you can see, this exhibit features a fine statue of King Caelenus, who presided over Norshua from years 704 to 720 of the Tarvinian era. Discovered by a fishing vessel off the western coast. The words fell off her tongue with practiced ease. She recited the history as she walked her friends through the statues of leaders, then led them to the back of the room where a glass case held the rare artifacts. I don't get it, Ryland said as he peered inside. Why display stuff like this? They're just knives, right? They're more than knives, Zephyri nudged Ryland. They're ceremonial, used in rituals, but not for everyday use. Exactly, Kira said. That knife was part of a coronation ritual, to be exact. Another piece of the same ritual was this, one of our rarest and most precious artifacts, the royal Tarvinian crown. Kira had seen it dozens of times. Its dull silver surface barely reflected the sunlight shining through the window. 10 rounded points rose around the circular object. Peter blinked at the crown in the case. Rosalind looked disappointed at the lack of reactions, but Kira couldn't blame them. Though it lacks the gold and gems we see on modern crowns, it's more valuable than all the treasures in the king's stores. This crown is made of pure balsam. Zephyri gasped. Ryland's face screwed in question. Balsam? What's that? One of the rarest materials on the continent, Kira said, and this is the largest amount of it any of our researchers have seen. Whoa, Ryland's eyes widened. That sounds important. This crown is over 1,000 years old, Kira said. How many? Her mother asked. Kira's stomach turned. She pressed her lips together and glanced at her mother. 1,054? 56, she sighed. This crown is 1,056 years old. Not that any guests will care about the exact number. Whoa. Ryland had wandered to the other side of the exhibit and stood slack-jawed in front of a large painting. What's this? Rosalind rolled her eyes. Kira crossed the room. As tall as her, the faded painting showed a vast golden throne room, piled with gems and weaponry. In profile, seated on a huge throne draped in green velvet, a tall, severe man gazed past the gems toward the open throne room door. A repeating pattern of circles with stacked rectangles inside was carved into the golden door frame. The man rested an elbow on his knee while his chin was propped on his fist and a bracer, shaped like a golden serpent, wrapped around his arm. He clenched something small and gold in his hand, but in the painting's condition it was difficult to make out what it was. This guy looks serious, Ryland said. This is a portrait of King Gilzidor, painted over 700 years ago, Kira said. That's 100 years before the supposed disappearance of the city of Kaitalia. Kaitalia? Ryland gasped. The city of gold? I've heard of that. Incredible. King? Peter stepped closer to the painting. Were they a kingdom? Norshand never had control of Kaitalia, Kira said, nor did anyone else. Where's this city now? Ryland asked. He and Zephyri drew closer, elbowing Peter for space. The only record we have of the city is the oral histories and the art made about it, Kira explained. According to legend, they built it entirely from golden bricks. It was a city of great wealth and prestige, with endless supplies of rare gems. Access to mystical healing power kept its citizens healthy and young. Healing? Zephyri asked. From what? No one knows, Kira said. But the stories speak of people who travelled to the city to have their wounds and illnesses healed. Peter leaned even closer, pointing at the canvas. What's he holding? Zephyri squinted. Looks like a knife. We are not sure, Kira said. Some art historians have suggested it's supposed to be the key of Kaitalia. A key? Ryland asked. Key to what? Not a key, the key. Legend says there's a key to unlock the treasures of the city. They call it the key of Kaitalia, but no one knows what or where it is. They think that's what he's holding, though. Rosalind tutted. Kira's gaze snapped to the ground. Please, stay behind the line. She chided herself for getting lost in the story and forgetting the rules. Oh, sorry. Peter took a step back, bringing his feet behind a white line on the ground. So, what happened to it? Where's Kaitalia now? Kira glanced back at her mother, who raised her eyebrows. No one knows for sure, Kira shrugged. King Gilzador was the last to rule before the city disappeared into the Straith Mountains. Disappeared? How does a city disappear into the mountains? Peter asked. The stories say that in Caitalia, thievery wasn't just a crime, it was morally forbidden. As time passed, the city grew and outsiders arrived. They coveted the wealth of the city. People took gold and gems from the land for themselves, even stealing from their neighbors. As the greed spread, King Gilzador feared the city's downfall. To protect his kingdom, he hid it deep in the mountains. That doesn't sound possible, Peter said. Hiding a city? Because it's a legend. Rosalind stepped forward. Paintings depict the stories told during that time, but we have no historical evidence that Caitalia ever existed. However, in our collection we do have genuine artifacts from that era that demonstrate how the people in those times lived. Kira? Kira felt a flush creep up her neck. Her mother allowed the tour to go off script sometimes, but not too far off script. Of course. She motioned away from the painting. This way, please. She guided them through the rest of the exhibit, noting how Peter continued to glance back toward the painting of King Gilzador. She didn't rush, but didn't linger, and soon enough finished the tour with a curtsy. That concludes our exhibit on Art of the Late Tarvinian Era. Zafiri and Peter clapped, and Rylan glanced towards the door. That was awesome, Kira, Rylan said. Can we eat now? Adequately done, Kira, Rosalind said. Memorize your dates and you can lead tours starting on half-day. Kira exhaled and managed a weak smile. She didn't expect glowing praise, but it would have felt nicer if her mother could be more positive. Either way, it's done. The four friends hurried out of the museum in an overlapping chorus of growling stomachs. I'm starving, Rylan said. Think the bitter bat will be crowded. He led the way, moving with purpose through the streets toward the popular inn, already talking Zafiri's ear off about the meats and cheeses he planned to order since Kira was buying. Peter lingered behind them next to Kira. Do you think it's real? He asked. The city of gold. Kira sighed. I should have known you'd latch on to that story. I don't know. Mother doesn't believe so. She thinks someone would have found proof it existed by now, an artifact or something related to Caitalia. But all we have is the art, which makes it seem like a myth. That's what she thinks, Peter said. What do you think? I don't know. There's a lot of art about it, like a lot. It shows up in plenty of stories around that period. Everyone thought the Amulet of Power was a myth too, Peter murmured. Kira nodded. So, it could be out there, somewhere in the Straith Mountains. Please don't get any ideas. I am not. Peter's grin suggested otherwise. I have got to stop inviting you to the museum. Chapter 4. Clang! The sound of iron striking iron echoed off the stone walls. Rylan grunted, holding his sword over his head to block Peter's strike. Slow down a little, will you? Doesn't that defeat the point? Peter pivoted on the ball of his foot and thwacked Rylan in the flank with the flat of his training sword. Killing blow. Rylan whined and stumbled backward. That's gonna bruise. Then block it. They moved back into their starting positions, and Peter raised his sword. The early morning sun fell in golden stripes through the oversized windows of the garrison, which now had glass in their frames. The renovation of the space was complete, and it was beyond anything Peter had imagined. Inside was vast and open, with a training space, a large rough-hewn table in a functional kitchen, and lofted bedrooms for each of them. It had a roof, proper doors, actual walls, no more crumbling, soot-stained rocks everywhere. Some of the treasure they'd found in the Fortress of the Sun had gone to the Vipers to pay off the Fairfields loan, and some went to help Rylan's mother get back on her feet. But a sizable chunk went to buying and fixing up the garrison. It was warm, nice, and protected from the rain. Zafiri lived there full-time, and the rest of them split their time between the garrison and their parents' homes. But more and more nights had them staying in their warm, private bedrooms. Peter had no regrets about how they'd spent the money, but it meant he still had to work at the Masons until he could join the army next season. Rylan scoffed and waved a hand at Peter. You run through your sword forms. I'm going to make breakfast. We can grab something on the way. Come on, practice with me. I want oatmeal. I'll make some for Seth too. We need all the training time we can get if we want to make it into the army, Rylan. I know. Ryland set a small pot over the kitchen fire. "But we need to eat, too." Peter ran through sword forms, practicing his footwork across the width of the training space. "I don't want to just be a foot soldier," Peter said. "I want to be great, I know." Peter sighed and set his sword aside. "It's going to be harder to stand out if we're not using our source power. Better to be a mid-level foot soldier than caught using swords." Ryland stirred the oatmeal into the pot and peered inside. "Maybe there's something else we can do." Peter wandered to the table and dropped into a chair. "I think we should train a reasonable bit, then have whatever skills we do when we sign up." Ryland ladled the oatmeal into bowls. "Safiri, wake up! I made breakfast." Peter propped his chin on his hand. The night before, he had struggled to sleep as thoughts of wandering through a vast city of gleaming gold ran through his mind. What if we found Italia? That would impress the commanders, right? I bet they'd send us on important missions to find other lost places. "Are there a lot of lost places in Rhino?" Ryland asked. "Seth, wake up!" "Stop yelling," Safiri called from her loft. "I'm awake." Peter hummed. Ryland was right. It was a stupid idea, and Kira's mother was probably right too. If it were real, an artifact would have shown up at some point. Ryland set a bowl in front of Peter, then groaned as he sat at the table with his own. "I'm still tired from climbing. We should use the amulet before we head to work." Peter downed a spoonful of oatmeal. Perfectly textured with a bit of honey, Ryland had improved his cooking skills during his time at the garrison. A ladder led to Safiri's loft, but instead of using it, she hopped down. Her eyes gleamed white as she softened her fall with her power and landed soundlessly on the hay-covered floor. The sudden burst of wind rustled the dust in the room and Peter's clothing. "Morning," she chirped. Her dark hair fell loose to her shoulders, and she beamed at both of them. Safiri had changed a lot since she'd shared the source. She was lighter on her feet, held her head higher, and smiled more. Keeping the ability a secret all her life had been like a millstone around her neck. After sharing it, she became a different person. Brighter, happier. She plopped down at the table. "Thanks for making breakfast, Ryland." "You have to work today too?" Peter asked. Safiri nodded. "Half day in the shop, and the rest running deliveries." "We might see you out and about," Ryland said. "We're on a job site today." "Moving on up in the world, huh?" Safiri waggled her eyebrows. "Something like that." Peter slurped the rest of his breakfast. He wasn't looking forward to spending the day at the job site, but it was different from the monotony of moulding bricks at the shop. "We should get going," Ryland said. "The site's across town." "Good call." Peter's mouth turned up at the corner. "You'll need the time. Some of us aren't as fast as others." "If you run through this city, there's no way you'll go unnoticed." Peter laughed. "Speaking of the source..." He stood and walked to the hearth where the fire had quieted to a low flame. Wriggling a loose stone free from the corner revealed a small wooden box hidden in its cavity. He opened the box, revealing the amulet of power nestled in silk. Nearly the size of his palm, the deep blue jewel faded to red at the top. Set in silver, it caught the dim light, sparkling like an ocean wave in the sunshine. The flame upon the sea. His breath still caught at the side of it. "All right," Ryland said. "Go." Peter lifted the amulet by its thin silver chain and rested it in his palm. At the moment of contact, its power surged through him, rushing over his nerves like cool water. He took a deep breath, eyes closed, and let the sensation wash over him. He felt like he could run to the northernmost tip of North Shore without stopping to catch his breath. The tallest peak of the Straith Mountains seemed accessible. He felt unstoppable, powerful, quick, and... "Time's up." Ryland picked up the amulet by its chain. "My turn." "Phew, so much better," Peter exclaimed. "I didn't realize how depleted I was." Ryland placed the amulet in his palm and held it with his eyes closed. Peter counted, watching as a smile traced Ryland's face. 10. Peter snatched the amulet back. He returned it to the box, then tucked it back into its hiding place at the hearth. Safiri watched from the table. "How many times this week?" "This is the first one." Ryland puffed out his chest. "See, we're making it last." Safiri raised an eyebrow and glanced at Peter. He nodded. We haven't forgotten the warning. Just as it gives power, it can corrupt. I could hold it all day, Ryland said. It feels amazing. Peter sighed. And that's why Akira's making us use it in pairs. Safiri relaxed. I'll clean up. You two get to work. She waved her hand, shooing them off into the cool morning. On the northeast side of Palenting, the job site lay at the edge of town. A clock in the street showed it was later than Peter had realized. He picked up his pace, pushing through the morning rush. Ryland said. We're still going to be late. An urge to run gnawed at Peter as if the power inside him begged to be used. If Ryland can refrain from lifting market stalls, I can hold back too. They kept their powers under wraps and made their way to the north side. The fine white stone buildings of Peritil View gave way to the hardier brick of the army facilities on the northeast edge. Peter huffed as they passed them by. A damaged guard tower loomed ahead. Rylan and Peter trudged through the surrounding mud as they joined the other contracted masons to haul rocks. Fairfield, Jenkins barked. There you are. Get over here. Peter sighed. Another workday begins. A few hours in, Peter's back hurt. His hands were rubbed raw from hauling bricks, and sweat dripped down his nape, despite the weather chill in the air. He dragged another pallet of bricks through the mud with Rylan. You know, I prefer working in this shop. Rylan wiped the back of his hand across his forehead, leaving a streak of mud. I do too. They labored through the day until the sun lowered to the horizon. Jenkins dismissed the crew, saying they hadn't made enough progress, but he always said that. Exhausted, sweaty, and covered in mud, Peter and Rylan headed south. Today sucked, Rylan said. I'm about to go back to helping my mother at her shop. As a seamstress, Peter knocked his shoulder against Rylan's. Come on, we're joining the army. Only a season left. A season of this? Rylan gestured at his muddy clothes. I'm going to end up spending whatever coin I make at Safiri's laundry. There are worse things to spend it on. Why don't you just work on the farm? Rylan asked. Is your father still insisting you become a mason? Peter pressed his lips together. Yeah, he wants me to stick with it. Still stuck on the danger thing? Rylan asked. Peter nodded. That, and he thinks the army will take me too far from Palenting. Isn't that the point? Rylan raised his eyebrows. For me, yeah. But even though the farm is out of debt and my father's making money, they want me to stay close. Just because you join the army doesn't mean you'll get posted halfway across Terranor. Peter shrugged, then let his shoulders slump. He still thinks I should become a craftsman. That'd be great, Rylan grumbled. Too bad we're just glorified bricklayers. Peter tugged at Rylan's shoulder. Come on, let's walk by the facility. You're unbelievable. Don't you want to get back and clean up and eat? I'd love to eat. It's on the way. We'll just take a minute. Men's shouts and clanging swords rang through the air as they approached the army training facility. Peter's mood lifted, and he picked up the pace. They're ending soon. Hurry! The training facility comprised a small arena behind the barracks built of wood and brick with a floor of hard-packed sand. It wasn't exactly open to the public, but they didn't block it off either. Peter wove through the wood and stone columns supporting the stands, with Rylan at his heels. Dozens of soldiers scattered about the ground, armed with training swords, shields, clubs, maces, knives, and even bows. Peter's eyes widened. The soldiers were fast, focused, and precise. Their weapons clashed, their heels dug into the sand. Every soldier wore the same thick leather armor and plain linen shirts. Peter tugged at the sweaty collar of his work clothes. In one season, he'd be in that arena too, in that polished leather armor, his blade shining in the late afternoon sun, shoulders burning with exertion. Each strike of the sword one step closer to his goals. His mouth pulled into a grin. Can I help you, boys? A deep voice asked. Peter jolted so hard he smacked his head on the nearest wooden post. He rubbed his temple, grimacing while trying to bow to the man behind the deep voice. Commander Isert. The tall, intimidating man sported a head full of silver hair falling to his chin. Intricate designs around the city seal of Palenting embossed his leather armor. He raised his eyebrows, peering under the strands at Peter and Rylan. Rylan glanced around as if considering bolting. Peter put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed. "Sorry, sir," Peter said, his voice wavering. "We were walking home from a workday." "Your route takes you beneath the arena stands?" Commander Isett asked. Rylan said. "Yes?" Peter knocked his shoulder against Rylan's. "We're working with Jenkins the Mason at a nearby job site, but we'll both be joining the army next season. We want to see what you do so we can be as prepared as possible." The commander nodded. He narrowed his eyes as he inspected the two of them. Peter prepared for an evening in the stocks when the man's face broke into a smile. "Next time use the door." He pointed to the arched entrance at the other side of the arena. "There are stairs to a viewing area." Peter gawped at the door. "We can come in and watch?" "Citizens are welcome." Commander Isett's expression hardened. "Though we look down upon trespassing." "Right," Peter said. "Sorry, sir. Next time we'll use the door. Thank you, sir." "Now run along. We're wrapping up today, but you're welcome back another time." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Commander Isett's smile reappeared. "I look forward to your entrance into the training program next season." Commander Isett turned, marched back into the arena, and shouted a command. The soldiers ceased their training and turned to face him with quick precision. Rylan grabbed Peter's forearm and dragged him from under the stands and into the street. "Come on," he said. "We're not supposed to be under here." "Yeah, but we're not allowed," Peter said. "You heard what he said." "Now he's going to remember us for being the two who hid under the stands," Rylan said. "Come on, I'm about to pass out from hunger." Peter turned back to the stands with a last gaze of longing. He sighed. "Fine, let's go. Where do you want to eat?" "Maybe Harrison's Tavern, or Mucklung's, or the Bitter Bat, or—" Peter chuckled. "What?" Rylan pouted, like the laugh offended him. "It's crazy. Before we found the amulet, we never would have discussed where to buy dinner. I'd love something hearty. Meat, maybe some potatoes." He tugged at his shirt, caked in dried mud. "The taverns will never let us in like this, though. I don't want to go all the way back to the garrison to clean up. How about polenta bites or the meal house?" Peter frowned. "They'll be packed." A rich aroma of roasted garrot on a spit and grilled verquosh caramelizing made Peter's stomach grumble as they entered the town square. "Let's get something from one of the market stalls." The vendors were out in force, selling boar, game birds, roasted vegetables, fresh, crusty bread, and hard cheeses from their stands. The sizzle of grease dripping on a fire reached his ears. The thick smell of seasoned meat filled his nose. Who needs a tavern? Peter beelined to the closest stand. "What happened to you?" a familiar voice sneered. "Did you roll around in the horse stables on your way here?" Peter closed his eyes and groaned. "Yeah, that's exactly what I did." He paid the vendor for 2 roasted garrot legs, then turned. Ashton Dunn wore a fine silk shirt and his usual smarmy expression. His lips twisted into a smirk and blonde hair fell into his eyes. "I can tell. You smell terrible." Peter took a bite of garrot. The meat was tender and perfectly spiced, melting in his mouth. "Come on, Ashton, I'm just trying to eat." Peter stepped around him and handed the other garrot leg to Rylan, who traded it for a skewer of roasted verquosh. "Better enjoy it," Ashton sneered. "I know you can barely afford those little skewers. This must be a treat for you after a tough little work-day." "At least we can work," Rylan said. "Some people aren't handed everything on a silver platter." "Rylan," Peter muttered. "Not now." He pushed his way past the older boy. Ashton stepped aside with a scoff, but then slapped the skewer out of Peter's hand. "Watch where you're going." Peter stared at the cooked garrot, now a feast for ants in the mud. "You jerk," Rylan hissed. "I've had it with—" "Rylan," Peter grabbed him by the upper arm. "Don't." "That's right," Ashton sneered. "Keep your dog leashed." Rylan shrugged off Peter's hold, then made a show of stumbling. He shoved his shoulder into Ashton, smearing his fine silk shirt with dirt. "Whoops. Sorry, Mr. Dunn. I've got a great laundry shop recommendation if you need one." Ashton's jaw dropped. You... Ugh. Peter bit back a laugh at Ashton's expression. Shaking his head, he took one last gaze at his ruined skewer, then gestured for Rylan to follow. "This shirt cost more than you'll make in a season," Ashton shouted as they left. "You better watch your back!" Peter and Rylan rolled their eyes, then kept laughing as they ambled back toward the garrison, sharing what food they still had. The weather was chilly as the sun set, but the food was warm, and Commander Iset's smile, had it been a little impressed, was still in the forefront of his mind. He'd had worse workdays. Chapter 5. Peter woke to the sound of rain thrumming on the garrison roof. He stuck his head out of his lofted bedroom and peered at the window. It wasn't just a drizzle, it was torrential, and heavy storm clouds filled the sky. Rylan stuck his head out of his own room, and they looked at each other. "You know what this means?" Rylan asked. Peter grinned. In unison, they shouted, "No work today!" The foreman had made that clear when they started. The mud would be impassable in rain like this. If Peter was dedicated to being a mason, he would go to Jenkins's shop to find other work, but with his enlistment date looming, he wasn't about to give up a surprise day off. Kira had stayed in the garrison the night before, which meant all four of them indulged in a leisurely breakfast as the rain pattered against the windows. "I need to pick up a few things from the market for dinner," Safiri said. "Anyone want to brave the rain with me?" "I'll come," Peter said. "I've got to stop by the farm and the market's on the way." Kira shrugged. "I don't mind the rain." "Well, I'm not hanging out here alone," Rylan said. "We'll all go." They finished breakfast, then bundled into boots and waxed cloaks with oversized hoods. Other than the rain, the streets were quiet. Water collected in shallow puddles on the uneven road. Despite the weather, the market in the square still hummed with activity, shielded from the worst of the rain by overlapping umbrellas and large canvas awnings stretched over the stalls. "Look!" Kira gestured to a vendor with a huge wagon parked across the marketplace. "The animal wrangler is here." She grabbed Safiri's hand and they raced across the square to the wagon. The wrangler only came to town a few times a season, and they never knew when he would show up. He travelled across Terranor working as a veterinarian and a taxidermist, and sometimes he brought rare exotic animals. The wealthy folks in Paratil View, with their greenhouses and gardens, loved to purchase the colourful birds and rare reptiles he brought from Feldor's Curd Forest. The wrangler wore heavy canvas clothes and a loose brown hat. His black goatee was greased to a sharp point below his chin. He nodded as the friends approached the cages stacked outside the wagon. Peter lowered his hood. In one cage, a green lizard the length of his arm flared its collar and bared its dual rows of teeth. In the cage above, a glossy black bird ruffled its feathers and blinked its beady eyes. There were toads behind glass, a slinky ferret-looking critter with a long ruffled tail, and even a huge, motionless turtle with a glossy yellow shell. "Look at this little guy," Safiri exclaimed. She knelt and cooed at a small fox with huge, flicking ears. The creature tilted its head at her, and Safiri mimicked the motion. Peter smiled, his eyes not on the fox. "Cute." "He's friendly, too," the wrangler said. "Good critter to have around if you want to get a mice infestation under control." Safiri's eyes widened. "I mean, we do live in a sizable space." "I don't think that's a good idea," Kira said with a smile. "We already have alley cats." "You won't if you bring this one home," the man said. Safiri grimaced. "Yeah, maybe not the best idea." "What's in there?" Rylan pointed at the back of the wagon where heavy canvas covered one of the larger cages. He leaned closer. The cage rattled and something within growled. He stumbled backward. "Whoa! Best keep your distance, boy," the man said. "That one's a special order." Peter stepped closer, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" "She's in a bad mood because of the rain. These critters don't like water. I've been trying to get her to sleep, but they are willful." He lifted the canvas. The creature inside the cage growled and bared sharp yellow fangs. It was a small, dog-like animal with a protruding spine, spindly legs, and large clawed paws. Its eyes were a deep red like rotting blood. Scars pockmarked its black and wrinkly, hairless skin. It drew its lip back even further, and its tongue lolled out of its mouth, foaming with saliva as it growled. "What is that?" Rylan asked. The creature howled, then launched its spindly body toward the front of the cage. Its jaws caught on the bars. Drool slid down the metal as it growled and thrashed, red eyes gleaming at Rylan. "A blood pansil," the wrangler said. "Hard to catch these little suckers. They're pack animals, dangerous but easy to travel with. They only eat once a month, right after they shed their skin." "Shed their skin? Like a snake?" Kira asked. "It's a bit scarier than a snake shedding, bloodier for sure. They look like they've been burned when it happens." The wrangler dropped the canvas back down over the cage. Inside it, the blood pansil snuffled and rattled the cage before quieting. A well-dressed man strode up with a loud, cheerful greeting, grabbing the wrangler's attention. He nodded at the four friends, then turned to the potential customer to offer a firm handshake. Rylan grimaced at the cage. "I think I've seen enough. I don't want to be here if that thing gets out." "Too bad we can't take that little fox with us," Safiri sighed. "If you want it, you can clean up the cat bodies," Kira said. Safiri shuddered. Fine, let's go." After a lingering gaze, the group peeled away from the wrangler. "I'm going to the butcher," Safiri said. Ryland's drifting eyes lit up. "Oh, damn it!" He rushed toward a small table where a handful of old men sat around a game. "You know where to find me." Peter followed Kira to the spice stand. He made casual conversation with the seller as she examined the peppercorns. "Who's that?" Kira set down the fancy salt she had been admiring and nudged Peter's elbow. "Have you seen that vendor before?" Tucked at the far end of the market, a small stall sat in front of a dilapidated building. The awning barely covered the goods. The vendor sat on a stool, smoking a long pipe with one shoulder exposed to the rain. Peter handed over coins for the peppercorns and a few other jarred spices. "Maybe a traveling vendor?" He slipped the purchases into his bag. "Should we see what he's got?" Kira nodded and smiled. "The traveling guys always have the best goods." Safiri joined them with cuts of paper-wrapped meat piled in her arms. She whistled at Rylan, who waved them off, already sucked into the gamut game. The vendor barely greeted them as they approached, keeping his attention on the pipe. He was short, balding, and missing his right ear. Peter leaned over the stand and peered at the wares for sale. Tiny clay pots from Tarfan, jewelry from Norshua, and ornate knives from Feldor. "What's this?" Kira poked around the pile of knives and withdrew a slim, unassuming dagger. Its dull blade contained rusty pockmarks, and dirt covered the hilt. Kira smoothed her thumb over the crossguard. A faded gold color glimmered under the dirt. The grip contained a divot, as if a decoration were missing. "One arguing for that," the vendor said. "It may not look like much, but it's a rare artifact. You've got a good eye, missy." "It's beautiful," Safiri said. She shifted the meat into one arm and brushed her fingertips over the dull blade. "It wouldn't be hard to restore." "Do you see this?" Kira pointed. "This marking." "It looks like—" Peter squinted at the blade. A circle with stacked rectangles carved into the hilt. He lowered his voice. "Like the symbol from that painting, the one of the king." "So you were paying attention to the tour," Kira said. "Yeah, it's the same." The vendor's eyes flicked their direction. "Does that mean it's from the city?" Safiri asked. Kira frowned. "I don't know. Anyone could have added this symbol to the hilt." "But that's not exactly common knowledge, is it?" Peter asked. "I didn't even know there was a symbol until I saw it in the Kaitalia painting." The vendor exhaled a cloud of smoke into the rain. "What did you say, boy? What painting?" Peter paused, his senses heightened at the vendor's keen expression. "A painting in the museum of Mykalia, which is, an old coastal city. It's gone now, sank into the ocean." The vendor laughed to himself. Right, I must have heard you wrong." He pointed to the scar where his ear once was. "My hearing's not as good as it once was. I thought you said something about Kaitalia." "Kaitalia?" Kira asked innocently. "That old myth?" "Ran into a guy who claimed to have the key of Kaitalia a while back," the vendor said. "I was going to, trade with him for it, but he didn't have it, just had that old knife. Looks Feldorian to me. Just another scammer trying to make a quick argan." Peter's heart pounded as he glanced at Kira. She raised an eyebrow and dipped her chin. "I think it's pretty," Safiri said. slowly emphasizing each word.
Don't you agree, Peter?
Her eyes shone.
I'll bet this is it, Peter thought. The key to Kaitalia. One Argan's
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.